Hello everyone, and thanks for attending tonight's webinar. Welcome, my name's Talia Newton. I'm the Climate Emergency Project Officer at Basco Shire Council, and I'll be your MC for this evening. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Bunurong and the Gunai peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waters that I'm on, and I'm sure many of you are too. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be joining us tonight. If you are joining us from elsewhere in Victoria, feel free to introduce yourself and acknowledge the country you're joining us from in the chat. Tonight's webinar, Introduction to Circular Economy, is part of a series of webinars that Bass Coast and South Gippsland Shire Councils have partnered with Renew on across 2025. Renew has been working in the sustainability space for over 40 years as an independent, not-for-profit body with a mission to inspire, enable and advocate for people to live sustainably in their homes and communities. This webinar and all the webinars will be recorded and made available on the CAP, the Community Action Portal, for future viewing. The 2025 webinars are designed to equip you with the information and knowledge to make your households cheaper to run, as well as more comfortable, energy efficient and environmentally friendly to live in. So now, without further delay, I'd like to welcome our expert presenter for tonight, Kirsten Duncan. Kirsten is a science communication specialist who's passionate about environmental sustainability and has a Master of Climate Change degree from the ANU. At the Conservation Council ACT region, she managed the Make the Switch and Make the Move projects to help Canberra households get off fossil gas and choose low emissions transport. She also managed CBR 360, Canberra's first ever circular economy symposium, which won an ACT Government Sustainable Event Award. Kirsten has many years of experience advocating for policies and programs to drive more equitable and sustainable living. She's currently the Council and Community Engagement Coordinator for Renew's 2025 Sustainable House Day program. Welcome, Kirsten, and over to you.
Thank you, Talia, and thank you, Bass Coast and South Gippsland Shire Councils for hosting this session. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and other groups with connection to the land around Canberra, where I live and work. And I welcome everybody to this session about a circular economy and how to implement it at home and in small business. All right, so tonight's talk I'm going to divide into two parts. And for the first part, we're going to talk about what a circular economy is and how to, what the features are, what the principles are, and how those and what we can do to enable it, excuse me. And then we'll talk in part two about what you can do at home and briefly talk about what you can do in business as well. And I'll share some examples and tools with you along the way and some places that you can find out more about going circular. So we'll start with what is a circular economy. But before we actually get to the circular economy, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the 20th century linear economy model and how we got here. So to start with, the linear, or you may know it as an extractive or throwaway or take-make waste approach to manufacturing and consumption that expanded and dominated the past 200 years, treated the earth as though natural resources and waste sinks were free and unlimited, and the economy somehow operated separately from natural systems. Even with a token amount of recycling of easily recovered materials like we mostly have today, glass and paper and so forth, even with that, the linear economy is typically driven by profits and is wasteful and environmentally destructive, which has consequences for human health as well. It's particularly wasteful of resources that end up being thrown into landfill that could have been circulated back through usage. It's destructive in many ways. We're all familiar with land clearing, deforestation, which made way initially for agricultural space, but also for mining, which then become wastelands after mining is completed. We have mountains of rubbish in landfill and plastic pollution filling our oceans and rivers. Our rivers and soils get poisoned by fertilizers and toxic chemicals from factories. We've got a species extinction crisis and biodiversity loss in regions across the planet. We have climate change, and we're experiencing increasingly extreme weather around the world. This also has impacts on disease outbreaks, like the migration of mosquito-borne viruses out of what were previously tropical areas, moving outwards from the equator. We also see social impacts through child labour and exploitation of workers in factories which are poorly built in poorer countries being exploited by wealthier countries. And these pressures then also result in migration of populations and wars over territories and resources. And we also see a migration from rural areas and agricultural production into urban areas. And then if that's not managed well, we see the proliferation of slums, which are also very poor for living standards. So what we also know is that human activities are accelerating. Everything about human society has accelerated over the past century. Some of this, like advances in healthcare, can be really positive, but is it increasingly and abundantly clear that the impacts of this growth are rapidly pushing our planet's capacity? These four little graphs here are just a selection out of socioeconomic trends out of Will Steffen and Associates' paper on the Great Acceleration. They're known as the hockey stick graphs because all 12 in the set have the shape of a hockey stick, where we've got a very slow and gradual increase over a couple of centuries from the mid-1700s. And then in the 1950s, we see a very steep upturn in the growth of many of these socioeconomic factors. Here we're showing population, primary energy use, transportation, and paper production. And it's really quite a marked change in production. There are many reputable organisations around the world that are measuring the impacts of human activity at local, national, and at global levels. There's a consensus that human society has become unbalanced and is exceeding safe, sustainable thresholds of planetary systems that make human civilization possible, including biodiversity loss, fertilizer usage, and climate change. You can see those red areas popping out of those planetary boundaries. Earth Overshoot Day, for instance, measures the day in the year at which we have used up an annual reasonable amount of our resources. And at the moment, that is in August, which is a bit frightening. So how did we get here? The concept of gross domestic product, or GDP, as you might know it, was invented more than 200 years ago to measure economic activity. And it became a bit of an obsession in the 20th century to measure recovery from world wars and the Great Depression. But it's a crude metric that measures all activity, including, for instance, responses to natural disasters, the clearing of forests, and the manufacture of the billions of tonnes of plastic that now pollute the planet, plus the activities to clean it up. So GDP growth is not a good indicator of human well-being, and it should not be the focus of policy development, which it has been for such a long time. Producers have historically not been required to factor in environmental and social impacts of the full life cycle of their products and operations. What happens outside the factory or after a product is sold has typically not been their concern. Many economies have for decades been attempting to rein in pollution by implementing incremental improvements through tools such as environmental standards or carbon taxes or other measures. These measures can be successful at preventing pollution, but they do little to curb mass production, and competitive profit seeking often leads to cost cutting, that is, choosing the cheapest materials and methods rather than the best materials and methods. Indeed, investment rules actually require companies to maximise profits to shareholders and investments, and this can drive companies to really make quite poor decisions. The culture of conspicuous consumption has also been around for centuries, but it has really taken off in the past several decades, particularly with the proliferation, excuse me, of social media and influencers and television, where we see, a standard of living that we all aspire to. To maximise profits, producers bombard us with advertising that tells us that to be successful, beautiful, popular, funny, loved, we must buy the latest trends for ourselves and our loved ones, leading to overconsumption of often poor quality and short-lived goods that will fairly quickly end up in landfill. Well-intentioned ordinary people like Red Cycle's founder Liz Castle attempt to solve problems created by industry, but without the right policy settings and market signals, such efforts struggle to succeed. For example, industry has made rampant use of cheap, versatile plastics made from petroleum oil with little regulation or investment to drive the market to recycle. According to the Boomerang Alliance, of the estimated 150,000 tonnes of soft plastic waste generated by households each year, Red Cycle was collecting about 7,000 tonnes, just 4.5%, a tiny amount, and only about 2% of households were even using the service. The vast majority of plastics produced went to landfill or was exported to other countries where it was burned for energy, with resulting toxic pollution. Unfortunately, less bad doesn't necessarily equal good, especially if governments and producers focus on improving a single attribute. Replacing all petrol vehicles, for instance, for one with electric vehicles may achieve zero tailpipe carbon emissions. Now all those cars crammed onto the highway emit no fumes. Good, right? Maybe. But imagine if we could instead redesign the transport system to move people rather than cars. This presents opportunities to reduce the number of vehicles, reduce the resources and energy required to manufacture all of those vehicles. It could reduce traffic congestion, which means we could then convert roads and car parks to more valuable land use, like recreational parks and community centres. We could improve social equity of access to transport, because cars cost a lot of money to buy and maintain. We could reduce those transport costs for families by providing better access to public transport. We could improve population health and reduce healthcare costs by getting people more active in their transport. So what about if we took it up another notch and redesigned urban areas to provide jobs, recreation, services and homes within walkable communities, so we didn't even need to travel for daily activities? That would be a great social equity outcome. So we're starting to grasp the idea of why circularity is needed. We can't rely on the industrial system and economic policies that got us here to solve the problems. The good news is there are opportunities. According to the CSIRO, only about 3.7% of Australia's economy is actually circular at the moment. So this provides a significant opportunity to increase waste recovery for economic growth. There's that idea of growth again. but at the same time, we could reduce demand on natural resources. The CSIRO estimates that new circular products from waste resources could provide market opportunities with the potential of a $210 billion economic boost for Australia out to 2050. That's a lot of business entrepreneurial that's possible. So now let's talk about a circular economy. The circular economy is a framework or a model for considering the purpose, design, and full life cycle of the products and services we produce. It situates the economy of things as a subset within the context of human society, which is then bounded by and dependent on planetary systems. It makes reference to and draws inspiration from natural systems and seeks to replenish nature while providing for the well-being of people and planet. I've chosen this image here of a parent bird feeding its baby in a nest because it kind of encompasses the idea of using the natural resources around us to build just what we need. It's not excessive in size. It does the job perfectly. The mother then can nurture the child is protected by the nest. And when they're finished with the nest itself will simply disintegrate and decompose back into the environment, providing those nutrients back to the plants that have been supporting it. Imagine if we could construct our society like that. There are many variations of a circular economy. There's not just one golden, magic formula for it. A framework or a model is simply a structured way of thinking about a topic or a system. So it lays out objectives, the logic and criteria. It maps the relationships and flows between different parts of a system. It may define what is in or out of scope for the system. It may define assumptions and rules for operations of the system or how it interacts with other systems. It may or may not be illustrated by diagrams. You can see here these are three of my favourites of circular economy. We've got Cradle to Cradle, a book by McDonough and Brungart on the left there. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation butterfly diagram with biological nutrients circling on the left and technical nutrients circling on the right. And then Kate Raworth, who came up with this concept of donut economics, which combines Will Steffen and Rockstrom's planetary boundaries to create that safe operating space for humanity. What all good circular economy models agree on, though, is these three simple but very powerful principles. And if you take nothing else away from this session, keep these three in mind. We firstly need to design out waste and pollution because waste equals food. Secondly, keeping materials in use at their highest value and regenerate nature rather than deplete it. What we conceive of as waste should be reconceived as inputs or nutrients for other processes. Leaves fall from a tree in autumn and become mulch and then soil, and then a new plant grows up. What if takeaway food containers did the same? Some of what gets called recycling is actually downcycling, where it loses quality. For example, beautiful, clear, coloured glass drink bottles, we have wine bottles in gorgeous pale blues and greens and clear. Those bottles typically get crushed and used as trench filler, which is downcycling, not recycling. Imagine if we could turn them back into beautiful glass bottles again. And imagine if your home's roof was a garden that filtered rainwater, kept your home insulated at a perfect temperature, and grew pollen-filled flowers for bees, while also being a lovely spot for a picnic. It's possible. There are examples of that. Apart from the potential economic businesses that the CSIRO identified from businesses tapping into circularity, a circular economy approach is grounded within our natural ecosystems and so has a host of benefits for workers and users of such products and facilities, such as healthier workplaces, no toxic rubbish polluting the environment, far less dependence on damaging extractive industries because we would be making use of those materials that we already have in the economy. The waste equals food approach encourages creativity and collaboration between businesses to exchange useful materials. Designing out waste means not creating products and materials that become problematic or unusable, potentially making the whole economic system cleaner, healthier, and actually sustainable. Governments could do many things with the right policy settings to enable a circular economy and drive industry in the right direction. The Australian government says that everyone who imports, designs, produces, sells, uses, and disposes of products has a shared responsibility to reduce environmental and human health and safety impacts of those products. But in reality, users can't fix the system. Designing for recycling is a key recommendation. When producers are required to participate in a stewardship scheme, for example, they change their practices and the scheme can be successful. For example, drink bottle manufacturers are required to use recycled material and to invest in recycling, and consumers are also incentivised to return bottles. You know, the little 10-cent return symbol on the backs of bottles. All of that helps to drive circularity, and it works. As you can see, this water bottle in the image is made from 100% recycled plastic, where just a few years ago it would have been 100% virgin plastic. Note, though, that drink bottle lids are still a significant problem. There are schemes for many industries already in place, such as tyres, batteries, computers, but unfortunately schemes are mostly voluntary and have low participation. And as we've seen with Red Cycle soft plastics, without policy support and investment, they have a limited effect or could fail completely. More things that the governments could do to enable circularity include mandating the right to repair, which would compel producers to design for maintenance versus planned obsolescence. So planned obsolescence is where something is designed basically to have a limited lifespan and then you're forced to go and replace it. Whereas designing for maintenance would enable us to take apart the object and replace components or make repairs to it. Regulation, taxation, or other mechanisms to incentivise use of recovered versus virgin materials would be useful. Environmental standards for production and recoverability of materials is also really important. So rather than creating, for instance, a textile fibre which combines plastic, polyester, and wool, it's very difficult to separate those components back out into recyclable materials. And so that monstrous hybrid basically ends up in landfill. We could revise perverse regulation, for example, health standards that prevent reuse. Clinics used to sterilise and reuse equipment on site. Now every item has to be packaged in plastic and many of them have to be thrown out after a single use. That's an incredible waste of resources. Governments could also support sharing or reuse economy by providing funding to community organisations. We could provide services versus product ownership, for instance, a laundromat or hire companies for cars, events, machinery, libraries of things, and communities like Buy Nothing. So a little bit more of an example of some of those that I've just mentioned. There are many grassroots initiatives around the country attempting to solve problems created by industry. Lids for Kids was started in Canberra by self-proclaimed bogan and Holden car lover Tim Miller, and it's now grown into a national social enterprise run mostly by volunteers to collect all kinds of small items like lids and bread tags, pill packets, batteries that can't be put into household mixed recycling bins. Lids for Kids also lobbies producers to improve their products, and that's had an effect on the bottles that we talked about earlier. They also advocate to government for investment, and they also produce products like these colourful benches from the lids that they collect. And it's a great way to raise a conversation about the problem of lids. As mentioned earlier, there are many opportunities for entrepreneurs to build businesses that strengthen circularity. Apparel is tackling the mountainous problem of waste clothing and textiles by creating a user pays collection service for uniforms, clothing businesses, and also individuals. You buy a label, you fill a box with your unwanted textiles or clothes, you post it to Apparel, and then they sort it either for reuse or they shred it for new products. And that's really commendable, and it's an essential step in circularity. Unfortunately, though, the vast scale of clothing production and textile waste needs intervention at the design stage and a shift in culture away from fast fashion cycles. The CSIRO and university research organisations like RMIT and Monash Uni work with industry to help develop more sustainable materials and recycling solutions. SMART at UNSW, led by pioneering scientist Professor Veena Sahajwala, is developing solutions for complex composite materials, what I mentioned before as monstrous hybrids. And they're also developing compact microfactories that can be deployed at council waste management depots, for instance, and run by social enterprises. Again, like the lids and clothing, a truly circular economy requires that we stop producing products and materials that cannot be recycled. Researchers are also investigating biomimicry for new products, which focuses on finding solutions and materials that already exist in nature and adapting these for human use. So you can help drive circularity. You can do so by choosing responsible products. And to do that, have a look for sustainability statements, maybe on their website or on the packaging. You can also suggest to companies that you like the products of but are disappointed about their packaging or some other aspect. You could send them some feedback, ask questions, make suggestions about what you would like to see from them. You can reuse and recycle. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. You can participate in government consultations. Most councils and state governments will have a page somewhere on their website that invites you to participate and have your say in government processes. You can support community initiatives, for instance, the Community Toolbox in Canberra, which is almost entirely volunteer run. And you can look at where your money is invested, your superannuation, your bank accounts. Who's your mortgage through? Have a look at the sustainability statements by those institutions and maybe think about moving it if you're not satisfied that they're investing ethically. So that wraps up part one. I'll let you digest that cartoon there for a moment. All right, part two, implementing a circular economy at home and in business. So now I want you to put your circularity lens on. There are many versions of the R's. We're accustomed to reduce, reuse, recycle, and these are often presented as a waste management hierarchy. But if you're a consumer, to think in a circular way, you need to at least add rethink. And if you're in business, you need to add redesign and reevaluate your business proposition. So rethink and redesign. Do you really need it? Is there a better way of doing this? For instance, I love this from the Community Toolbox in Canberra. You don't need a drill, you need a hole in the wall. So maybe you could borrow that drill rather than buying it. So this is a great way to minimise goods and packaging coming into our home or business by choosing the responsible products and choosing suppliers who minimise their packaging. Don't buy single-use items. That's a pretty simple one. Buy reusable things. Maintain your possessions to maximise their useful life. Share items by joining a community library of things. tools, books, clothing, toys. There's so many things that now communities are sharing. When you no longer need an item, you can pass it on in those communities, or you can sell it secondhand on Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace or eBay, or you can donate items in good condition to charities. And at the end of their useful life, look online to find the right solution for that item and take those materials to recycling centres for recovery and remanufacture, or maybe even regenerate things if they're compostable. So we've got a few different aspects of the kinds of products that we typically find in homes. So we're going to dive into each of these in a little bit of detail. So food is an organic material, like garden waste. We can kind of apply some of the same principles. Firstly, you could grow and preserve some of your own. Not everybody has the space to do that. And not everybody has a green thumb. I'm not a green thumb myself. I have a few tomatoes, and that's about the extent of my vegetables. You can buy from farmers markets, and that way you're buying directly from the person who does grow it for you. Take your own containers to Whole Foods stores. So you can buy, a jar of flour, or a plastic, take your own, Tupperware container to fill it up with dried fruits or rice or lentils. They have lots of really great whole foods in those stores. Plan your menus in advance of going shopping so that you only buy what you need and don't end up with a whole lot of excess going off in your fridge. And even better, plan it seasonally so that you can take advantage of the produce which is most abundant and cheap at the time. Eat your leftovers, or at least feed some of it to your dog. You can compost your food scraps, both when you're preparing food and you're chopping off the tops of carrots or whatever. And if you have those leftovers that become inedible, you can pop them into your compost bin, or take advantage of the compost service offered by many councils around the country. Choose less perfect fruit and veg. So supermarkets have had this really artificial standard of beauty for fruits and vegetables, which means that thousands of tonnes of produce never even makes it off the farm. So by choosing the odd bunch, you can actually help farmers to use more of that produce. And take your own reusable cup and shopping bags. I see so many people heading out for their coffee break, mid-morning in the city, and walking back with a takeaway coffee cup. They knew they were going for coffee. It would only have taken them 30 seconds to walk past the kitchen, pick up a cup and take it to the cafe. So it's not good enough just to know about these things or to have them in your cupboard. You actually have to make use of them. Clothing and textiles, as we mentioned, there's a huge mountain of excess clothing and textiles driven by fast fashions. So rather than head to the shops next time you're after something, pop into a vintage shop or an op shop and see if you can find something interesting there. You'll certainly then end up with a unique item, and you can make some really good finds. This top that I'm wearing, David Lawrence, reputable brand. I bought it for $7 at my local Vinnie's. Join a swap or share group, and this is particularly great for clothing for special occasions. So rather than going out and spending $250 on a dress that you're going to wear once or twice a year, go and borrow it. There are actually shops that will hire you an evening dress, for instance. Learn to sew, repair, make, alter. If you go to Vinnie's and you find something that's really great, it's handy to have those skills to be able to alter it a bit to make it fit you, or update it a little. Buy the best quality that you can afford, and just buy, one piece rather than 3 cheap things. Donate your old clothes to charity, as we've said, but make sure they're in good condition and there's something that you would actually want to wear yourself. Charities are overwhelmed by vast quantities of cheap clothing that has, warped and discoloured. They don't want it, they can't use it. Send that end-of-life stuff to a recycler like apparel. Household consumables. We all need to buy our soaps, our shampoos, our cleaning products, but we can do it a little differently. Bottled liquids are heavy and therefore costly to transport. And why pay for that water if you don't have to? Instead, look for dry products like laundry detergent sheets, soluble tablets that you can mix into a bottle of water to make your own cleaning solutions, and beauty products, for instance, shampoo and conditioner in the form of a dry soap bar. You might want to try out some different brands to find things that you like and that you're happy with. But it's a great way also of traveling if you've got these compact things that you can pop into your suitcase. You could also take your own bottles or containers to bulk produce shops for refilling, or some companies will sell refill pouches that you can empty into your reusable bottles that you have at home. It's also really important to look for non-toxic organic ingredients so that we don't have lots of surfactants and other chemicals entering our waterways after we've used these products. In addition to the liquids, there are, of course, the bits and pieces, the tools that we use daily, things like toothbrushes and hairbrushes and cotton buds and so forth. Look for reputable eco brands. Look for organic and natural materials like bamboo instead of plastic. These eco-friendly alternatives are widely available now in supermarkets, in whole food stores, in sustainable living stores, and also online. So try a bamboo toothbrush with a tin of toothpaste rather than a plastic tube. Try some steel clothes pegs, they'll last forever. A reusable fabric gift wrap is a much more delightful way to present a gift than using cheap single-use paper. Reusable takeaway food containers, and so on. There are so many wonderful products out there now that could replace your disposables. You can join community libraries, as we've said, and borrow the things that you know you won't need forever, like books and toys, particularly children's things, baby clothes, that sort of thing. We know we're only going to use them for a limited lifespan. And then, of course, consult your local council about the recycling services when those things reach end of life. So appliances and electronics, we all have them, probably too many of them, most of us. Before you go out and buy the latest and greatest air fryer or new hair dryer or something else, do your research at choice.com.au. Many of their articles can be accessed for free. Some of them you do need to buy. It is worth purchasing a Choice article. I think they're about, $20 to $30 for an article. If you're buying an expensive appliance like a fridge, that money is really worth it and you'll save immediately by choosing a better product. Check efficiency labels when you're out looking for appliances as well. So the energy efficiency and water efficiency, depending on what you're looking at. And you can also check up that energy efficiency information at energy.gov.au. If you enter the make and model of the appliance that you're looking for, you'll find that information online. In your home, make the switch from gas to electric appliances. We can do without the fossil gas in our homes, and electricity is much more, the electric appliances are much more efficient at providing heat for water, air conditioning, and cooking. Try hiring an appliance or using a service if you don't actually need to own it yourself. For instance, if you're maybe young, single, or maybe getting older and single and living in a smaller space, maybe you don't actually need a washing machine yourself. Maybe you could use a collective service like a laundromat. Try buying or try hiring an appliance before you buy it if you know that you're only going to be in a residence for a limited time. Or buy refurbished. There are companies out there now that will buy secondhand white goods, refurbish them, clean them up, and give you a warranty on them as well. Keep your appliances maintained and clean, and that way they'll last longer, and also be of greater value if you come to resell them or pass them on. And again, check your council website when you're looking at disposing of a broken appliance. Building and renovating. We suggest you start by finding a builder with good sustainability credentials. Renew's website, for instance, has plenty of information about energy efficient and sustainable building and renovating, including the Sanctuary and Renew magazines that are available by subscription. You employ passive solar design and energy efficiency principles, and you can take advantage of this when you're renovating as well. Find where north is and see if you can maximize window space on a north wall, even if that means maybe knocking a new window in a room that previously is oriented differently. Go small with clever design rather than massive. We really don't need butler's pantries. What are they? Why have we got this trend to build butler's pantries? Use natural materials with low toxicity. So use your timbers, look for paints that are non-toxic. Add solar panels and a battery to use your own energy and cut your bills. And this is a really effective way to go all electric as well. Your entire house powered by just the sun. Salvage and reuse materials. For instance, if you're repaving outside, don't just chuck away those pavers. Think about how you can reuse them in a new design before you go looking for new ones. Maybe if you need more pavers, maybe find a complementary design that you can creatively combine. And again, check with your council about construction waste. So do what you can within your capacity. It can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes when I've presented so many solutions to you and you're thinking, oh my God, that's so much, I can't possibly do all that. Pick one thing and do that. And then once you're comfortable with that one thing, pick another thing and do that. And you'll find that gradually over time, you've made a lot of choices by the time that you add these up. As we've said, check with your council about sustainability programs and services. They also have educational materials like these webinars. It can take time. It can take time to research what the solutions are, to find the products, the best products available. It can take time to travel, sometimes to find those products or to find those recycling services, particularly if you're out in a rural area. You may need a bit of time to load a broken old washing machine onto your truck to take it to a recycling centre, but it can be worth it if you've made a good choice for the environment. Good quality and environmentally responsible products may also be a bit more expensive, but they are better for planet and people. And you might find that because they're a better quality, they will actually last you longer, and that can offset the cost of the slight difference in cost in the purchase. You may also need to pay for recycling services, for instance, the apparel service where you buy the label to post the box. But it also costs you money to take things to the tip. So if you're going to pay to take something to the tip, maybe investigate whether you could pay to take it to somewhere where you know it's going to be recycled instead. Share communities will also help you to find those resources. And it can be really empowering to have conversations with people and learn from your peers and pool your resources. We can also shorten supply chains by buying from local businesses that are acting responsibly. We cut out massive amounts of transport energy, for instance, by doing that. And we can also support social enterprises that are supporting the people in our own communities. So that wraps up households. The advice for businesses is similar. You can apply all of those same principles. But obviously in our business operations, there is a bit more that we can do. So you can start by auditing your operations for all your inputs and outputs. So that would be your materials, your energy, your water, your wastes, and your labour. Map your supply chain and your full product life cycle, including packaging. So that means identify who all your suppliers are. Who are their suppliers? Where do those products come from? Because there might be quite an opaque and long supply chain behind it. Identify the purpose of your business and the impacts of your products on the community. Where do your products end up? What do people do with them at the end of their lifespan? And then review each of those above through the lens of the circular economy principles. So, can you redesign things? Where is there waste and pollution that you could potentially design out? Could you choose some different suppliers? Write a plan of action, and then have a look around for funding. There are lots of funding opportunities around for businesses that are looking to improve their sustainability. It might be through your council, state government, or other funding institutions like Bank Australia with community grants, etc. And then the most important step, of course, is get started. Do something. There are many tools that you can draw on, both in Australia and internationally, to help your business, large or small, to review your operations and improve your circularity and identify opportunities to do that. Here are just a few for inspiration. But as soon as you plug, circular economy tools for businesses into your preferred web browser, you'll come up with some great suggestions. So cradle to cradle, getting certified can take a lot of work, but it can be worth it because then you can tell your clients and your customers about what you've done. B Corp certification is also a really great holistic way to look at the impacts of your business on the environment and on society. To learn more about going circular, there are lots of places. The first three there are those three models of circular economy that I showed you earlier on. And then there are also things like international standards, organisations' standards for circular economy. The European Union Circular Economy Act is also a really great source of information. And if you're just interested in reading a bit more about the state of the planet, those hockey sticks graphs that I mentioned and the planetary boundaries, etc., can all be found in this paper, Reflections on the Past and Future of Whole Earth System Science by Johan Rockström. There are plenty of Australian initiatives about circular economy. The Australian government has pages about product stewardship, for instance, about packaging. There are circular economy initiatives in almost every state government. Many councils will have some information about circularity as well. And if you're not much of a reader and you just want somebody to tell you stuff, I really recommend watching War on Waste, which is an ABC TV series presented by Craig Rucastle. There are a couple of series of that now and real great eye-openers to the scale of the problems of waste in our community. And if that all just sounds too serious, maybe jump onto this link here and watch a couple of those comedy sketches about circular economy. And finally, I have a joke about trickle-down economics, but most people won't get it. Did you get it? Thank you very much, Bass Coast and South Gippsland Shire Councils for hosting me to give you this presentation today.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting. We do have some questions already, and anyone who has any other questions, please feel free to keep putting them into the Q&A section down below. There are a couple of things that I'd like to mention before we get to the Q&A. The first is our Living Lightly workshop series. So tonight's webinar is part of that series. We have online and in-person workshops throughout the year. We're partnering with Bass Coast Adult Learning, South Gippsland Shire Council, and lots of other great organisations to cover topics such as energy, food, gardening, and circular economy. So you can register for lots of those now. The link to register will be in the chat. Another thing, Kirsten mentioned some library of things. So our local Miley libraries, they have quite a few different things that you can actually borrow from there rather than purchasing yourself. Some of the things are around home energy efficiency. So we've got thermal imaging cameras that are available to borrow, induction cooktops if you're thinking of getting off gas but want to try them out before you commit, and then home energy and water efficiency kits as well. They include instruction manuals, and they can help you identify, the thermal imaging cameras can help you identify areas of heat loss in your home. The link to find out more information about those will be in the chat, or you can just go into your local library as well. So we'll start with some questions now. The first question, so how do you go about distinguishing between companies and products that are genuinely trying to be responsible and those that are greenwashing?
Yeah, really good question. Thank you. So yeah, greenwashing is a real problem. And particularly when, you've got mining companies that are still digging up coal or petroleum, but they're also doing renewable energy. And so they tell you all about their wonderful renewable energy activities while they're still doing all of this fossil fuel mining. So yeah, greenwashing can be quite difficult to identify. Go to the company's website and have a look for their sustainability statements. And it kind of needs to be a little bit about making your own judgment. Or if you're not sure, or you think a company is making false claims, you can refer it to the ACCC for some review.
Yeah, great. I think as well, if you look at the company's own website, but then also do some research outside of that, you can get some really, really good information too.
Yeah, that's right. I find online reviews can be really helpful. So if you just type in review of whatever product or company it is that you're looking at, you'll pretty soon figure out whether they're genuine or not.
Yeah. Thank you. The next question we had says, what a great presentation. Thank you very much. I was feeling so depressed when you started your talk, but the ideas for actions have inspired me to do something. I won't be able to do everything you suggested, but we'll try. Should we ask the Bass Coast person which of your suggestions they're doing or supporting? Certainly.
That's putting you on the spot there, Talia. I just want to say none of us are perfect. So yeah, it can be really depressing sometimes when you see all those terrible pictures and think about the mountains of waste and whatever else, and you think, oh my God, I'm just one person. How can I possibly make a difference? It's about the scale. It's about, the power of numbers. So if every one of us can make even just one little change, and you multiply that across a population of 25 million people, it can actually be really impactful. So don't doubt the power of your own contribution. And now it's your turn, Talia.
Thank you. In terms of like personal actions, I really love like shopping secondhand. And I also try to be quite critical about what I buy and assess if I really do want or need certain things. I don't like waste, so I do love to reuse things and repair them when I can. And I'm also learning to sew so that I can make and repair my clothes. And then if they're talking about council, we have a climate change action plan that sets quite ambitious targets for both council and the community for 2030. Bass Coast Shire Council also has FOGO, so food and organics as part of the waste collection service. That will soon be standardised across all of Victoria, I think by 2027. Council has a 100% renewable energy contract, so all of council's electricity comes from 100% renewable energy. And then we also we have things like these webinars and the workshops that we offer to help the community to make changes as well. So yeah, a few things that are happening. So
while you're looking at questions there, Bass Coast Council is also participating in Renew's Sustainable House Day program this year. And so that's going to be a really great opportunity for everyone to visit homes that have good energy efficiency, who have retrofitted, you know, for instance, electrification. My home's going to be open. My home's not perfect, but I've done, you know, this bit and that bit and electrification and, you know, shade trees outside my windows and things like that. So do find out about the Sustainable House Day program and get involved in that because your council is supporting it.
Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning that. That's included in part of our Living Lightly series, but great to mention it as a standalone too. The next one we've got, not so much a question, but they've said we can't always fix everything that needs to be done all at the same time. I can't help feeling a lot guilty that I throw anything out, especially as I've just had to move house and not everything I tried to get picked up and reused was possible. Yeah, and I guess like you were saying, Kirsten, it's not possible to do everything, but if it, you know, don't just let that be a reason to do nothing, because any action when lots of people are doing it, it does add up.
Yeah, that's right. So don't beat yourself up for what you can't do, but, you know, do the things that you can do. Yeah, those little actions will make a difference. And, you know, hopefully maybe some of the things that you had to leave behind when you moved house, maybe somebody else did actually come along and pick it up for you. It's pretty common to see bits of furniture out on the street. And I know I've made use of furniture off the street in previous homes that I've lived in too.
Thank you. That's all the questions that we have for now. We do also, I know you mentioned the some things around building and renovating and sort of circularity around that. We do have some of the Renew webinars just on that topic. So again, the page to the Living Lightly workshops will be linked in the chat, and you can have a look through those because there are some specifically around building and renovating if that interests you. Otherwise, we will wrap it up there. So thanks so much everyone for your time tonight. I hope this has been informative and has answered maybe some of the questions you had around circular economy, or has perhaps introduced you to the topic of it. Thanks so much for your expertise tonight, Kirsten, and the very interesting presentation. And thank you also to Andy from Renew for the behind the scenes support. Now, before we close the event, just like to remind everyone the next workshop in this series is on Tuesday next week. So Tuesday the Tuesday the 4th of March, I think at 6 p.m. And there are lots of other webinars and in-person workshops covering various topics coming up as well. A final reminder that this webinar has been recorded, as well as all the other webinars that we're holding over the year, and it'll be posted in the coming weeks on our website, so you'll be able to rewatch or find it there. And thanks again for attending. Hope to see you all in future webinars or workshops. Thanks.